Boker Tov, Shavua Tov to everybody. Today's daf is daf Kuf Dalet, as we learned for Fushling, for Yosef Azriel, Ben Chaim Michal, and Elazar Ben Ruva. Says the Mishnah, Cholza Balayla, Chalitzasa Kshera. If you did chalitza at night, what would be the problem doing it at night? Well, all judgments are supposed to start during the day. And this is also a judgment. How is it a judgment? Because Rashi points out that chalitza is like a din, a judgment, a law case to go v'ksubasa, because when she gets chalitza, then he has to give the ksuba. Of course, we learn the ksuba comes from the Yerusha, from the estate of the deceased husband, right? Because otherwise, if he marries her, if the other marries her, then eventually he'll give her ksuba when their marriage ends. But at this point, if he gives her chalitza, then it's over as at that point, and then he has to give her the ksuba. So there's a money exchange there too, and therefore it's a judgment. So the Tanakhama says, he says, even though judgment is supposed to take place during the day, it's supposed to start during the day, but it could end at night. So if he did a chalitza at night, the Tanakhama says it's kosher, kshera. Rabbi Elazar plus Rabbi says it's not. We'll see the basis of the machlokus in the Gemara. This small, let's say, he did chalitza with his left shoe, meaning his left foot. Took it off his left foot. In those days, I'm not sure that they had left and right sandals or shoes. I'm not sure they were that sophisticated. But the point is, it means it's not just the shoe; it's the foot, right? So if you did it with the left, shoot it with the left foot, Tanakama says it's no good. Psula. Rav Elazar says it's kosher. So we have two different machloks in the Mishnah. In one case, Rav Elazar passes, in the other case, Rav Elazar is machshir. Rav Elazar, it's not Rav Elazar, Rav Elazar. We'll see the Gemara now. What's the machlokus in the first part, where the chalitza could be done at night or not? Tanakama says if you did it at night, it's okay. Maybe there's a machlokus. The Marsav Makshina and Rivim Minigam. The pasuk says when it comes to plagues, it says kol riv v'chol nega, any argument, any dispute, and any plague. So there's a hekesh between the two. So maybe it says Makshina. The question is and Marsav Makshina Rivim and by nega it says le'einei t'chsev v'yom haros bo. When he shows the nega to the Kohen, it has to be during the day. Nega can only be seen during the day. So maybe that's the question over here. Is there a hekesh? Is there a juxtaposition, a connection between arguments, law cases, and this is a law case, as we said, because she has to get paid her ksuba if there's a valid chalitza. So Makshina Riv and Nagam, is there a hekesh between the two? So just like nega can only be seen during the day by the Kohen, the same thing with Riv. Umar Savalo Makshina. One says no. We don't make that hekesh it's not a real hekesh, even though the words are next to each other, but we don't darshan as a hekesh. Hekesh is also halacha l'mashmi Sinai, so it wasn't darshan that way. So maybe that's the machlokas. If you say there's a hekesh between Riv and Nega, then just like Nega can only be during the day, the chalitza can also only be during the day, and that's why we're blessed with pasul. The Tanakh comes says no, there's no such hekesh. The Slug Mar says that's not the basis of the machlokas. Everybody agrees that it's not really a hekesh over here. And if there would be a hekesh, afilu gemar din balayla namilo. In other words, if it would be a hekesh between Riva and Nega says that it can only be done during the day, right? That the Kohen can only see the Nega during the day. What's the halacha by cases, by law, by judgments, cases of money matters, gzela, halva, things like that, so where there's a money issue? The halacha is in Sanhedrin that you could have to start it during the day, but you can complete it at night. The verdict can be rendered at night. So if it would be a hekesh between Riv and Nega, you wouldn't be able to do anything at night. You wouldn't even be able to do the verdict at night. And the halach is that you could do the verdict at night on money matters. So therefore, there is no hekesh over here. So clearly there's no hekesh, otherwise you wouldn't be able to render verdicts in money cases at night. What's the machlokas here between Tanakama and Rabbi Elazar? One holds that the chalitza is like the beginning of the din, and therefore it has to be done during the day. It is a din, as we said. Money will be exchanged here, and therefore it's a din. And the question is it like tchilas din? That's what Rabbi Elazar says, and therefore you can't do it at night. It's like you're starting a case now. No, the case has gone on since the marriage started to his brother. This is like the verdict over here. All you're doing is the chalitza. It's one final act. Therefore, it's like the Gemara din, and therefore it even be at night, and it's a money matter. Okay, now we tell a story. We learned before that the Mishnah, the Visha said the chalitza has to be done with 3. Remember, we have Rav Yehuda said it should be 5, and we came out that Rav Yehuda retracted his opinion. Really only need 3, And we said, why do you have the extra 2? For publicity. Remember, for publicity. Yeah, and at that point, you asked, remember, Avram asked, well, if it's publicity, they don't really have to be kosher. So we said, they don't have to be able to, first, you don't have to be able to, what's the point? We said, even non-professional, non-mumcha, not rabbis could also act as judges. It could even be adults, as long as they can dictate, say these words, and so, say the words of Ma'ain Yevami, and except you have to base Cholos HaNoel, and you have to say Kochi Esalish. You have to say, you have to be able to dictate the words. So true, the additional 2 don't have to be able to dictate the words, but as we saw, they still have to be full Jews. They can't be Gerim, right? So they don't have to. They're really just there to add publicity to it, but they still have to be people who are kosher, at least in the sense that they are they're full Jews. Okay, so we said you have to have, but the halacha is you have to have 3. Now we have a story like this. Rabba Bar Chia Katusva, Rabba Bar Chia from that city, from Katusva, whatever. Abinuvda Bamok, he supervised and ruled over a chalitza where they used a moke, which is simply, we had the other day at the bottom, the last line of Kuf Beis and Beis, Bamok, and we had it also at the top of Kuf Beis and Beis. Moke is like a felt sock, did not a shoe, uvi yachidi, and with one person. In other words, not 3 judges, but with one. Uvalaylan at night. Amr Shmuel says, boy, this guy thinks he's something. Kama Rav Guvre, how great is this man? The Avi Kichido, he said this sarcastically. How great is this man? Oh, that he's such a great man that he went ahead and did something like the opinion of an individual. Like, he feels he has such authority that he could even do these things which are seemingly against halacha. You didn't have a shoe, and you did it with one rabbi, and did it at night. So the Shmuel said that. So the Gemara says, I understand. My kasha, what's the big difficulty over here? They did like an imok, stamatani. If you talk about a felt sock, there was a stam case. There was a stam brisa. The brisa at the bottom of Beis and Beis that we learned the other day said if you used a minnow that was a shoe that was torn, but it covered most of the foot, or it was a sandal that was broken, but it still covered most of the foot. If it was out of cork or out of bast, out of tree fibers, or even with you use the stump of a amputee, right, the prosthetic foot, or felt, or these other things, it's kosher. So, in other words, as we said, Morris said yesterday, didn't we have to be? We learned from a pasuk it has to be made out of leather, right? So we said on yesterday's daf, okay, this is a dissenting opinion that it doesn't have to be made out of leather, or maybe it's speaking about where this prosthetic foot was covered with leather. It was a prosthetic foot. We're talking about it was covered with leather. 2 different opinions, but you see, there's a possibility there's another opinion that no, that's the main opinion we saw is supposed to be out of a leather shoe. Another opinion doesn't have to be leather; it could even be wood. After all, the Mishnah said that, as we said in yesterday's Gemara. The Mishnah said it was made out of wood. Made out of wood. Etc. So if it was left foot, but it was on his right, it was left shoe, it was his right foot, it's kosher. It's got to be on the right foot, as we'll talk about the last part of this mission about if it's on the right foot or not. But you see over here that the felt sock was even stam brisa. Not who says that's an opinion of an individual, that it's a shitas yachid, that it's only one person holds that way. So imok stamatanya. Eli also stamna. Our mission just said Tanakam says if you did it at night, it's okay, because he considers that to be the Gemar din. Okay, so why do you say it's an opinion of an individual? Eli Yechidik Kasha. The problem was that it's an individual's opinion. Why is that? Because how can you do a story with? How can you do it? Eli Yechidik Kasha is how do you do it with one rabbi, with one judge, basically, with one supervisor? How could that be? This that we say that you could do it with one person, that's not what our Mishnah said. We saw 3 and 5, etc. Right? Nobody said you could do it with one. No, there is an opinion like that. We're going to see that, but it's an opinion of one rabbi of Rabbi Kiva. So the next mission on the base, we're going to see this today, Mitzvah Hashem. If you did chalitza, you said you have to have 3 people, right? 3 people you need for chalitza, a 3-judge court for chalitza. Let's say you did it with only two people. Or you did it with 3, but one of them was found to be a relative or disqualified for some other reason that he's not a valid judge. It's no good. They say it's okay with 2 also, but we don't hold that way. There was a story. There was a guy who did it just privately gave a chalitza in jail. The Gemara is going to explain later on that Rabbi Kiva was in jail. He saw it. He was the individual. He was machshrit. In other words, only Rabbi Kiva says one person could do it. The Bach takes out the next line. Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Nachman, goes to Zug. But either way, the law is not like those two rabbis who say you could do it with even two, and only Rabbi Kiva said you could do it with one. Now this is the problem. He says he paskin he paskin you could do it with that he did it with felt. He did a ma'isa where he didn't use a rather proper shoe. He used a felt sock, and he did it at night, and he did it with one person, one rabbi alone. Okay, the felt sock I can understand. He said the lila I can understand. That's our Mishnah, but he did it in front of one rabbi who says that. There's only one person who says that. That's Rabbi Kiva. He's the only one who holds that way, that you could do it with one rabbi. So that's why he said this wasn't such a great thing. He could say that all three things were said by one person. The Tanya Rishmov Rabbi Yossi, Anira Isis Rishmov, and it's Isa Rishmov and Elisha Shechalotz Mamot. In other words, it was all said by one person because yes, it could be that the Mok and the Lilas agreed by other people, but he saw Rishmov and Elisha who did chalitza with a felt sock with one rabbi, and at night, in other words, when he said, when Shmuel said how great is Muslim, that he did like one person, like he went like the sheet of a yachin, he meant like this Rishmov and Elisha, who also did chalitza. In other words, Rabba Barchia, because his father also did chalitza like the Rishmov and Elisha, who did it with a felt sock, with one rabbi, and at night, and the felt sock and the nighttime we can understand. It's Stam Bryce and Stam Mishnah. But Yechidi, that he did it with one person, that only goes like Rabbi Kiva. We don't hold that way. Okay, so the Mishnah said the small chalitza, if you did it with the left foot, it's no good, right? Rabbi Lazar was machshir. What's the reason why the Rabbanan say if you did it with the left foot, it's not good? Amar Ula, Yafinu Regel. It says v'cholza nalo me'al raglo, and it says regel by mitzorah. By mitzorah it says regel hayaman is the right foot. Malon diyamin, just like there is the right one. Afkan diyamin, it's got to be the right foot. If you did it with the left foot, it's no good. Rabbi Lazar, who says that it's okay. Lo yolafreg, he doesn't know regular mitzorah. What do you mean he doesn't learn out this business of regular mitzorah? But Rabbi Lazar, a slave, a Jewish slave, who's slave for six years, and then what happens? He decides he wants to stay on, right? What do? They take him to the door, right, and they bore a hole in his right ear. And with that makes him an eved until Yovel, right? The dozen of Adelis, right? So they bore a hole. How do you know that's got to be in the right ear, not the left ear? How do you know it's in the right ear? Never kind of says Ozen the ear, but then Ozen, it says Ozen by Mitzorah. Remember, it says he put the Shem and I'll bowen Yad Yamanis, I'll bowen Ragla Yamanis, I'll bowen Ozen Yamanis. It's got the Shem always on his right ear, on his right hand, on his right thumb, on his right toe. The Nevel Ozen. Ma lahol and yamin, just like over there by Mitzorah, it's the right ear. Afkan yamin. So you see, Rabbi Lezer holds this, right? Rabbi Lezer says that you learn from Mitzorah, it's got to be the right ear, just like there has to be the right ear. So the Chari holds the same thing. You should say the same thing here, that you learn out from Mitzorah that it's got to be the right foot when it comes to chalitza. Let's turn it around. You're right. Rabbi Lezer clearly holds that you learn from Mitzorah that the limbs that we're talking about be the right one. Just like by Mitzorah, it's the right ear and the right foot and the right hand. So presumably chalitza also has to be the right one. Let's change around. Ravam, no, don't turn around. Ozen mufni. This that he learns out that when you bore the hole in the eved's ear, it's got to be the right one. That's okay because the word ozen there is extra. Why? Because by Mitzorah he brings down that it says ozen there twice. Right? By boring it says there twice. So therefore there's an extra. It's extra to learn out this Zera Shava. It says there's an extra Ozen by Ritzia, by the Evet, and therefore you can learn it out from Mitzorah. Mitzorah it's extra, and there it's extra. You can learn that out. But over here, regel lo mufti. But regel it's not mufti. There's not an extra regel over here that it does. It's a lo mufti. Mishnei tzadin elamit tzadechad the Mitzorah. By Mitzorah it's extra because we're talking about the right one anyway. So we know it says it several times there. B'chalitza, it's not extra. It says that she v'cholza nalo me'al raglo, just as regel once. So there's no extra regel to teach you. And if you don't have an extra one in each case, you don't learn the Zera Shava according to Rabbi Lezer. So Rabam Lolu Motevech Ozen Mufti. You could learn out boring of the Evet's ear. That's extra because it says there's an extra Ozen, so you can learn out the Zera Shava from Mitzorah. Regular Mufti. Okay, so Mechila Mufti might be. Rav Lezer holds, okay, if it's not mufta, you could learn Gzeira Shava, but if there's a question, you can refute the Gzeira Shava. So he says, V'chi lo mufti my pircha. What's the question that you have over here? My pircha ika. Ikal mefach malatzor shekain tone eitz eras v'oizev v'shishvas. Matzor has an extra stringency because when he's matar himself, when they're matar at the end of his tzaras period, they have to dip the oil. They use their cedar wood, eitz eras, v'ezav and hyssop, which is lost in scarlet. So there's an extra stringency over there. So you can say there you have to do all that, and therefore it's required there to be the right one. But over here, if it's not the right foot, even though it says baraglo, it says baraglo over here, right? Raglo, she should take a shoe off his foot. It doesn't say the right one. We want to learn out from Mitzorah. But you can't learn it out from Mitzorah, but it says because it's a Gzeira Shava, but it's a Gzeira Shava that's mufrach, that you can refute. And therefore, you can refute it with a question. And therefore, he says that. And Rashi points out, it's an important Rashi. Rashi, the last few lines before the Mishnah, at the bottom of Rashi, Rav Lezer holds throughout Shas that if it's only, when you learn Gzeira Shava, there's a word here and there's a word there. If in one place the word is extra, but in the other place it's not, it's mufti mitzad echad, it's only extra here. Here it's only extra in the case of Mitzorah, not in the case of the Chalitza. So Lamaiden, you can learn the Gzeira Shava, but if you have a question, Mashiva, and you can refute the question. That's what we learned out from here. This is the source for that.
Perhaps a person doesn't have a right ear.
Pardon?
Perhaps a person doesn't have a right ear. Got cut off.
Yeah.
So he can't do it with left ear?
In the case of
who had his ear cut off.
Yeah.
So he doesn't have a right ear.
According to Rav Lezer, you wouldn't be able. So he wouldn't be able to. He can't become an Ephraim. Let's say he has no ears. What are you going to do? Cut his nose off? Just like you need a right ear. Now I have to learn the parsha of Evet to see if that's not. If he only has a left ear, can you do it on the left ear? I think there is such an exception. I don't recall for sure, but I think if he doesn't have a right ear, you could do it on the left ear. Maybe not. I'm not sure. But let's say he has no ears. Just to show you, okay, so what are you going to do that he has no ears? We'll talk about cases where it's an impossible situation. Maybe if there's no ears, so that's it. You can't do it. Okay, so there's other cases where we talk about a stump, right? You talk about the stump of a hand, right? That you can do the stump of a hand or something. But over here, if he has no ears at all, what are you going to do? You can't presumably you can't become an Eved for a life. If he's an Eved Kanani and the Shane Vahi, if he took up any of his limbs, the guy goes out free, right? So, but not by an Eved Ivri. Okay, so we have two halachas learned in the Mishnah. Number one, that if you did it at night, according to the Tanakama, it's okay. Rav Lezer says you can't do it. You can't do it at night. Apostles it. The Ram Sechem is on that. Interesting. Ram Sechem is on that at night. Chalitz is no good. If you do it with the left foot, it's also puzzle. And we there either go like the Tanakama, and Rav Lezer disagrees because he doesn't know the Gzeira Shava. But so he would apparently hold that it's kosher. He said, not apparently, he says it's kosher if you did it with the left foot. But we would go like the Tanakama that if you do it with the left foot, it's no good. Okay, now what does the woman do here? There's three things that a woman does when she does chalitza, besides complaining, right? Complaining that he doesn't want to marry her. She recites the verses. She says, Me'ein Yavami. She comes to the rabbis and she says, that's Pasuk Zion in Perek Chafei. And then, they debate it, they call him in, and they first encourage him, but if they see it doesn't work, as we saw, they give advice. We'll see that later in the Mishnah. And then she comes in front of them, and she removes the shoe, and she spits in front of him, not at him, she spits in front of him, and she says another pasuk. There's three things she has to do: recite psukim, take off his shoe, and spit. Those are the three things she has to do chalitza. Now, are all three required, or is it enough if she just does one of them? So the Gemara, and this is what the Mishnah is going to discuss on the first part of the Mishnah. Let's say she removed the shoe and she spit, avalo kar, but she didn't read the psukim, chalitza sikshera. Everybody agrees that's okay. The psukim are not ma'akev. She didn't read it, it's just still a chalitza. Let's say she read the psukim and she spit, avalo chalza, she didn't chalitza sikshera. Obviously, we call it chalitza, removing of the shoe. That's the main thing. If you didn't do chalitza, if you didn't remove the shoe, that's not good at all. Okay, let's psula. Chalza v'kara avalo rakka. Let's say she did the chalitza and she read the pasuk. She read the psukim. She read the verses that she's supposed to read, but she didn't spit. How important is the spitting? So Rabbi Lazar Mechalitza Spula is no good. Rabbi Lazar holds you have to have at least chalitza, you have to remove the shoe and spitting. Again, if she didn't read the psukim, everybody agrees that's not ma'akav. That's not indispensable.
Because they were illiterate at that time.
Okay, maybe, but even if they read it for her, they said, say after me, maybe. Okay, maybe that's what she has to be able to, but it's not, they were illiterate, so whatever the reason is if she didn't read the psukim, it's okay. According to Blazer, she has to do both the removal of the shoe and the spitting. Rabbi Kiva Omer Chalitza Sak Sheira. If it's okay, if she removed the shoe and she read the psukim, even if she didn't spit, it's okay, it's kosher. We'll talk more about Rabbi Kiva in the Gemara. Says Rabbi Kiva Shita. Omerle, Rabbi Lazar at the top of them. What do you mean? It says, how could you say that if she doesn't do the spitting, it's okay? It says, anything that involves an action. Reading the words is not an action, but spitting is an action. Removing the shoe is an action. Anything that's a ma'aseh, that's an action. Ma'akav is indispensable. It's a requirement. You can't get away without it. Amalei Rabbi Kiva, Misham Rai, you bring your proof from there. It says not just kochiyasa. You said kochiyasa. Anything that has to be done with an action, she must do. Mashma kocha. Kocha is usually shows that it's indispensable, that it's required. But it's only kochiyasa. She does it to the man. Kodo shows my spish. Anything she does to the man, removing a shoe is something she's doing to the man. The spitting she's not doing to the man. She's just spitting in front of him, in front of the bezin. So it just spits. So doesn't say it. So maybe the spitting is not required. And he says, ish. Anything that this would be done to the man. What does she do to the man? She removes his shoe. So you have this machlot between Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Lazar. According to Rabbi Lazar, the spitting was required. According to Rabbi Kiva, it's not required. Okay, that's one mission. Now we have like another mission. Another hacherish shenechletz. Let's say a cherish, right? You have a man. Reuben dies, and he left two brothers, Shimon and Levi. Shimon is deaf, and when we say deaf in the Gemara, deaf always means deaf and dumb, and we are considered to be limited intelligence. That he's retarded. That not today where we know a person could be deaf and he could be a genius, or a person could be deaf and dumb today we know could be a genius. But in the Mishnah, when it says cherish, means somebody presumed who has limited intellectual capacity. So a cherish shenechlatz, that he did chalitza, or means chalitza was done to him. Or she was deaf and dumb and chalza, or chalitza like time she did it with a child who's not bar mitzvah, the boy is not bar mitzvah, the yom hamid chalitza sapsul, it's no good. And we'll see the Gemara is going to say, Rashi says it also here, that whenever we say chalitza sapsula, right, it means that she's puzzled now she can't do yibum anymore to the brothers, but it's not a good enough chalitza because they're considered their diminished capacity, diminished intellectual capacity to do chalitza. You have to be able to have, a full faculties, meaning you have to be bar mitzvah, you have to be a gadol. When it comes to yibum, we learned before that even a 10-year-old to perform yibum, let's say the brother died and he left one brother, he's 10 years old. 10-year-old can also do bia, right? And if he does that, it's a good marriage because he can't marry her on her own. 10-year-old cannot be mekadosh and isha. But over here, where there's a zikiv and a Torah, if he performs the yibum, it's yibum. But chalitza he can't do because he's not bar mitzvah. So here we see right? However, what does it mean? It's that it ruins him or ruins her. It's possible in the sense that she's not she's not free to marry based on that, right? And therefore, what can they not be yibum? Rashi says so what do you do in a case like that? You can't do chalitza. The only option is for him to marry her. That's all you could do. For example, let's say a man marries a woman, or let's say the father married her off when she was 3 years old. So you didn't need her consent. And now it's a full marriage min Torah. Now the guy dies, the husband dies. You can't give her chalitza. She's a chereshes. What do? The only option is to marry her. They can marry her. He can marry her, and then he can give her a divorce because it's a marriage d'oraisa because it's yibum. So the yibum is he could divorce her afterwards, but he can't. In those days when you could give get without her consent, but there's difficult cases. What happens if he's a cherish? Rashi says over here the cherish that gets chalitza, it's puzzle, and therefore Rashi says over here if mokamach lepotra psula acherish shecholitz chitzas psula lepotra b'makam ach kosher. If there's another brother, he should do chalitza. It doesn't. That doesn't release her. In fact, if he's the only brother and it was a marriage minat Torah and the only brother is a cherish, we'll talk about that later on. There's no option. He can marry her, but he can't give her chalitza. She'd be stuck. She'd have to marry him or be stuck forever. It's a complicated case. We'll talk about that more later on. Chaltza b'shnayim b'shlosha. Okay, now this is the mission we mentioned Amud Aleph in the Gemara. Let's say the chalitza was not done with three proper judges. Three proper judges, we said, could he even commoners, right? Even idiotas, as long as they can dictate the words. But you didn't have three; you only had two, or three. But one of them was found to be unfit. Chalitza subsul, it's no good. One guy did it between them alone, just him and her in the jail. It sounds like there was nobody there. We'll talk about it in the Gemara. The Gemara is going to say that Rabbi Kiva was actually there. He was the judge, and he was machshur. It was one. So Rabbi Kiva, as you said, is a shitas yachid. We don't hold that way. We hold you need three. Okay, we'll talk more about this. So different parts to the Mishnah. The first part of the Mishnah, though, talked about the three actions that she has to do. We said, well, the words, reciting the words is not really an action. She has to read the words, she has to spit, and she has to do chalitza. We'll see later on if the order is important. But the first words that she says is, she comes to the court, she says he doesn't want to give me yibam. Then the court deals with the whole thing, and it says and then it says after they agree that this marriage can't go forward, she removes his shoe from his foot. We said it means the right foot, and we said the left foot is no good, right? You learn out regel from Mitzorah. The yark of Afanov. So it says, and then afterwards she says Kachi Esalish. So there's one recital before she removes the shoe and spits. Then she removes the shoe, then she spits, and then she says another recital afterwards. Now we're going to talk about that. Amar Rava, Hashtam and Kriya Lamakva. Everybody agrees in the Mishnah that if she did chalitza and spitting, she removed the shoe and spit. The kriya is not ma'akif, right? It's not indispensable. It's not required. So Lamakva lefichach ilam v'ilmes. This is what Rava says. Therefore, let's say he is dumb, as you can hear, but he can't speak. Ilma, or she's shecholzu chalitzas and ksher. It's okay because the recital is not required. So therefore, you could even do chalitza with somebody who's an ilim and an ilmis, and we're assuming over here now also that they're also limited capacity. Okay, that's what Rava says. The Gemara says no. Tanan, our mission just said cherish and echletz, cherish shecholza, b'chletz merakan, chalitzas psula. Why is a cherish no good? My time alav mishum dalav, because they can't hear, they're deaf and dumb presumably, and they can't read. So this one also, the ilim and ilmis, the people, the ones who are dumb, they also can't read, so it should be no good. Why do you say that if kriya is not ma'akiv, if reading is not ma'akiv, therefore if they can't read, it's okay? But it says on a Mishnah, the cheresh is no good. Why? Presumably because he can't read the Torahs. It says, "Lo, mishum bla b'nei deinu." No, you say the reason why a cheresh is no good is because they are limited intellectual capacity, because they are retarded. That's why they can't do it. So yachi ilam vilmas nami. So a dumb person was also considered to be retarded. Rava no. So Rava says no. They are bright. They are regular intelligence. But they just can't. They're limited. For some reason, it's like their mouth hurts. It's like they have a sewed-up mouth. They can't speak, but they're not of limited intelligence. Okay, that's what Rava answered. Therefore, they have full faculties. They just can't speak. And therefore, since recital is not required, they could do chalitza. But in the school of Rav Yana, they said the reason why cherish is no good is because he can't say the words and she can't say the words. In other words, he has to also say the words, right? And he also has to say the words in there. He has to say, I don't want to take her. Right? No, so we said it's not required. The kriya is not required. So if it's not required, why is that a problem? Okay, we'll talk about that. We're going to mention that and we're going to explain it in a minute. But he said the reason why Rav Yana explained the reason why the cherish is no good is not because they are limited capacity. Rav Yana says, "Look, be shade of him." He can't say the reason why cherish and the chereshes are now good is because he can't say lo chapatzi lekachta, and she can't say the two recitals. So you see, the problem is being able to speak, and if that's the case, an ilam and ilma also should not be able to do chalitza. Rava said, "I safe it." I must be on this. The safe Mishnah said, in other words, Rava said the first part. We assumed the Gemara that Rava was going on the Reisha. Reisha said if she did chalitza and spitting and didn't do the kriya, it's not ma'akav. Therefore, an ilam should be okay because you don't have to say the words. We said, "Nah, what do you mean? The reason why cheresh and chereshes is no good is because they can't say the words." The same thing would apply to an elam, also because they can't say the words. So Elamai, Rambam's going on the Sefer. Oh, wait a minute. The reason Rabbi Yana explained was the reason why Cherish is no good is because he can't say the words. So once you say that you can't say the words, therefore, an ilam, it's not that it's okay, but Rabbi is saying they're not okay because they can't say the words. But how do you jive that with the fact we just said that you don't say the words is not required? Goes like Rav Zera. Rav Zera, very famous drasha that Rav Zera says, famous thing, if a person gives 61 measures of flour for a carbon mincha, he has to put it in 2 vessels. Why? Because the flour has to be mixed with the oil. And they said, listen, and 60 can be mixed with oil properly. 61 cannot be mixed with one properly. It's too much flour in the clay showers to mix properly. So it says over there, but we said, what do you mean? But you don't have to mix it. If you just put the oil in, you didn't mix it, it's also okay. So Rav Zera said a famous line there in Kachim, and we learn out from there to all over. If it's roy to be mixed, then it's not ma'akav. But if it's not roy to be mixed, then it is ma'akav. Then it's indispensable. Over here, we're saying this. If she could speak and he could speak, it's not ma'akav. As long as you did this removal of the shoe and the spitting, it's okay. Even if you didn't do the reading, but you have to be capable of reading. If she's not capable of reading, for example, cherish, a person who's deaf and dumb, or a person who's just dumb, can't read the words, if he's not capable of it, then it is ma'akav. And that's what we mean over here. In our mission, we say that if you didn't read it, it's okay, but you have to be capable of reading. If a cherish and cheresh and an elam are not capable of reading, therefore it's a problem. You have to be capable of reading. Even if you didn't do it, it's okay because you could have read it. But if you're not capable of reading, then it is a problem, and that's why they cannot do chalitza. They cannot do chalitza. They could do yibam, as we said, but they have to do chalitza, and therefore we said it's a problem over here. If she is a chereshes, and it's if we'll talk about the various cases. If there's 2 brothers and 2 wives, all these cases we're going to talk about later on in the Masechet, later this week or next week. We're going to talk about those cases, but in a simple form, if there's a marriage to Oraisa over here, and she's a chereshes now, and that's the only way to perform the mitzvah is to do yibam, or she's going to be stuck. You can't do chalitza to her. And same thing if he's a cheresh, he can't do chalitza. And therefore, the only option is to get married and then divorce her. Okay, so that's what. But if he's a cheresh, he can never divorce her, right? Because he's not a bardas. So if she's a cheresh, pardon, he can't marry her on his own. But here we're talking about, let's say Reuben was a regular brother, and he married this woman. He died with no children. He was a normal person, and he left a brother who was deaf and dumb. He can't do chalitza. He's deaf and dumb. If he could do yibam he could do because there's a zikim and a Torah. So if he's miyam her, it's a marriage and a Torah. The only way to get rid of her now is either to kill her or him to die or to give her again. He can't give her again. He'd be stuck with her forever. Okay, so we'll talk about those cases. Those are more complicated later on. Okay, now we have a story. They sent Shmuel, Shmuel's father, the following halacha. Let's say a Yabama, all she did was she went to court and she spit. She liked the spitting part. She's angry at the guy who doesn't want that. So she spat. Didn't do the shoe yet. She spat. All right. So it says, Sharaka, what you should do now is once she spat, she have to do chalitza. Meaning she can't say, oh, you're spitting? Okay, I will marry you now. Okay, you're angry, we'll marry you now. No, it doesn't. You can't do even afterwards. Yavama, Sharaka, once she spat, even though we said that according to Bekiva, spitting is not required, but if she spat, she has to do chalitza now. Meaning, like Rashi says, then if Selslam, you can't do Yibam anymore. That she can't marry her brother's name. Money. Who does that go like? Who does that go like that Shita? Elam Rabbi Kiva goes like Kiva. Listen to this. Mitzvah. When they're doing the mitzvah, doing chalitza. Doing the chalitza, you're supposed to do spitting. What did Kiva say? If you didn't do it, it's okay. So yeah. Mashmakom mitzvah. Like the fatty parts of an animal. Fatty parts of an animal, you're supposed to put them on the mizbeach, burn them, and then you could eat the carbon. That's what we learn in Kachim. Let's say the fatty parts became puzzle and they got lost. They're not here. It's not makif. So marach, you could say like be'imurim. They're not here. It's not makif. Go ahead and eat the meat anyway. But if they're here, makif, if you have the fatty parts, it's makif. You have to burn them before you eat it, or at the time if you put them on the back to burn them. So you could say it's like imurim, and if they're here, you have to, they're makif. If they're not, Rabbi Kiva says la makva. Still, Rabbi Kiva says in the case of spitting, even though you're doing the chalitza, you could do spitting. Everybody can spit. It's not ma'akiv. So ma'akiv, where you could say, listen, if it's here, it's ma'akiv. Still, Rabbi Kiva says it's not ma'akiv, right? Ma'achim ifsla. Why would he say that it's puzzle? Why would he? In other words, he says spitting is so unimportant that even when you're doing the mitzvah and you could spit, you should be required to spit. Rabbi Kiva says, nah, spitting is not so important. If you didn't spit, it's okay. So how could that puzzle him from Memyach? In other words, spitting is almost meaningless, as we'll see later on. Let's say she just read the psukim. He doesn't want to be. She didn't do the spitting. She didn't do it. That's nothing. Didn't do anything. They can even decide they can make up and get married if they do the even right now. But Rabbi Kiva says, so how could you say over here that if she spat, okay, that's it. You can't do even anymore. You have to give her chalitza, right? When she spat, you get. Rabbi Kiva says that it's not important even when she's doing the chalitza, and she could spit. If you didn't spit, it's okay. So why would he say that apostles? That's what we're assuming now. Rabbi Kiva, Rabbi Lazar, according to Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Lazar held that if you didn't do the spitting, it's no good. Rabbi Lazar says you have to do the spitting and the chalitza. Everybody agrees that if you spat and you do chalitza, you don't have to do the kriya, you don't have to do the recital, but you have to do, according to Rabbi Lazar, you have to do chalitza and spitting. And two things are matter. One is not good with the other, as we'll see in this next case. Ella goes like Rebbe. Who could that go like? Who says that if you did the spitting, that's it? You have to do chalitza now. It doesn't sound like it would be Rabbi Kiva, and certainly not Rabbi Lezer, because Rabbi Lezer says spitting alone doesn't do anything. You have to have both, as we see in Ella goes like Rebbe. The Tanya kipsi atzeres Shavuos. They bring the kipsi atzeres to two lambs, and when you do the shchita, the only time that makadosh the lechem is now holy bread. You can't take it out of the base of mikdash; it becomes puzzle, and it's capable of being eaten now. It's actually chametz, right? It's the lechem with chametz. When are they kaddish? Only b'shchita. Okay, it's at shachtel lishma. If you did proper shchita lishma, b'zark dama lishma, and you did zrika lishma kaddish lechem. The lechem is kaddish. Now you could eat it, and you can't take it out of the base mikdash. It's kachim. It's got to eat it inside. Shachat shalol lishma. You did shchita shalol lishma. You ruined the shchita. Zark dam shalol lokish. It's not kesh at all. Shachat lishma. The zark dam shalol. Let's say you did the shchita lishma and you did shchita lishma. Kaddish ve'ena kaddish divri Rebbe. Rebbe says, well, it's holy in the sense that you can't take it out of the base mikdash, but it's not much to be. You can't eat it. It's a puzzle if it went outside the base mikdash. But it's not kodesh that it's mutter to be eaten. That's what Rabbi says. Rabbi Lazar Shimon Omer no. When two things are required to be matred, you need both of them, right? Like he says over here, you need chalitza and rikika and spitting. You need both. So it must be goes like Rebbe. Okay, so we had this memra that if she spat in front of the bezdin, the brothers can no longer do chalitza. Just puzzle them from doing yibum. They cannot marry her anymore, and they must carry forth and do a proper chalitza. Because nobody says that spitting alone is okay, right? But if she did spitting, they must now carry forth and do the chalitza. You can't go back now and do yibum. That's apparently what he meant to say. That yibam mishraka chalitz. But we said it doesn't go like Rekiva's. Now the Gemara says that here's a little bit different according to the Bach. Yeah.
What happens if she just spits and it's pussy, right?
Right. No, if she just spits, right. If she just spits, yeah.
And what happens then if the whole thing finished? Can they do it over again?
If what?
They start the whole
No. Once she spat, as we'll see, once she spat, we're saying now she can no longer do yibam, and you have to do chalitza. She's not free to marry because it's a chalitza psula. She's not free to marry anybody, but yet she can't form yibam. She's also to marry her the brothers. So you do the chalitza. Not your chalitza. You didn't do chalitza yet. You have to do the chalitza. You don't have to do the rakika again. You don't have to spit again. As we'll see the order. If you did the spitting before the chalitza, that's okay. We'll see that tomorrow. We'll talk about that tomorrow if that's okay. But now the Gemara says, okay, you said it can't go according to Akiva. Ulu Rabbi Kiva, the Gemara says, Ulu Rabbi Kiva, Rakika lo pasla. You're saying that according to Rabbi Kiva, it says Rakika is not such a requirement. Rakika alone doesn't do what he doesn't matter. By the time we learn Chaltza below Rakika, the Brisa says this. Let's say you did Chalitza below Rakika below Kara. Our Mishnah says if you did Chalitza Rakika, that's good enough, right? Let's say Kara Baraka, we didn't Chalitza, that's not good enough. Chaltza v'Kara, and you didn't, if you did two, and our Mishnah gave a case where you did 2 out of 3. So if you did 2 out of 3, Chaltza v'Kara, below Rakika, Rav Lezer says it's possible. Rabbi Kiva says it's okay, but he's talking about you did 2. What about we only did 1? Chaltza, you only did Chalitza, the Bryce says, below Rakika, below Kara, and you didn't spit, and she didn't read the recital, Chalitza Kshera, says it's okay. Rakika, if she only spat, below Chaltza, below Kara, if she only spat herself, she did Chalitza, Psula. All right, that's what we seem to say now also. Kara below Rakika, below Chaltza. Let's say she just read the psukim, she didn't do it, she didn't spit, she didn't take any action, below Chaltza, and Kamizvech, there's nothing here at all. Now, Chalitza Psula, as we said, means what? That it's no good, but she can't marry the brothers. You need a proper chalitza in order to free her to marry the shuk. Ein kan beis mechesh means there's nothing here at all. All she read is psukim. You can read psukim all day. It doesn't mean anything. You're a psukim zuger, but it didn't do anything. They could still marry her. Now, who does that go like? Elam Rabbi Lezer. Rabbi Lezer could say it's Rabbi Lezer. Chaltza b'lo rakah b'lo kar chalitza sikshe. How do you say there's chalitza love? Bam Rabbi Lezer kachi esalish. Here it sounds that's a Rabbi Eliezer. In our Mishnah, it's really Rabbi Eliezer. So that would mean that the first Mishnah we learned today is Rabbi Eliezer. The second Mishnah we talk about is Rabbi Eliezer sheet. Rabbi Eliezer. It's Rabbi Eliezer who says that you need right. Here's Rabbi Eliezer of Shimon Omer and Kodesh, but it was Rabbi Eliezer who said that you need both. That you need both spitting and chalitza. You can't do without spitting. It's no good. So how could our Mishnah say when you say over here chaltza below rakiko below kara chalitza sikshera? That can't be Rabbi Lezer. Even Rabbi Lezer chaltza below rakiko below kara chalitza sikshera. But Rabbi Lezer kachi estelish davar shu ma'isa ma'akev. Anything is ma'isa ma'akev. Elab sheet goes like Rabbi Kiva. Viktani rakiko below chaltza below kara chalitza psula. So you said before, we said on the bottom of this daf on Amid Beis that it says on Rabbi Kiva, it doesn't make sense. Rabbi Kiva says that even though you could do something right now, you're doing the chalitza and you could spit, and if you didn't, it's okay. So how could he say that that spitting alone makes her puzzle to marry the brothers? That's what it sounded like. But here you see a brisa which says chotza v'lo kara v'lo kara chalitza kshera. Right? If she did chalitza and didn't spit v'lo kara chalitza, and yet you say rakaka v'lo chotza v'lo kara, all she did was spit. It's a puzzle. It's puzzle. It means ruining it for the brothers, but you need another chalitza. So leman v'lo kara chalitza psul leman ilema la'alma. When you say her chalitza psul, it's no good. What does that mean? Ilema la'alma to marry anybody else? Pshita. If all she did was spit and didn't do chalitza, obviously she couldn't marry her. She's not free to marry anybody in the street. El Lav means to the brothers. Shma mina. So you see over here that even Rabbi Kiva holds that if all she did was spit, it's a chalitza, it's puzzle, meaning she's not free to marry somebody in the shuk, but it's also she can't marry the brothers anymore either. You need a proper chalitza afterwards. So now the question that the Gemara ends off with Rabbi Kiva, Maishna Rakika, Maishna Kriya. Why, when it comes to spitting, listen carefully, why it comes to spitting, if all she did was spit, it's possible she can't marry the brothers anymore. You need a new chalitza. It's a chalitza psula, meaning she can't marry these people on the street, but she can't marry the brothers either until she gets a proper chalitza. But all she did was read the psukim, it's nothing. It's nothing. She could even marry the brothers now. There's nothing at Maishna Rakika or Kriya. It says Kriya, the Isa Beim Tchila Beim Yisov. Listen to this. There's things that she reads before. The actions are the removal of the shoe and the spitting. But she says before Me'en Yavami, and she says afterwards Kachiyasa. She recites things before the actions and she recites things afterwards. So Kriya, which is before and after Lo Michlafa. When people said, oh, wait a minute, she did a chalitz, we heard her read the psukim, and then she's marrying the brothers, that's okay, because people will not assume that the whole process finished. As we don't want people to think that you do chalitza and then follow that up with yibum. As we learned before, once you do chalitza, you can't marry anymore, right? So by reading, they won't assume that if you read and then the brothers married her, that the chalitza was done and afterwards there was a yibum, because people know she read the first word, the words before the chalitza, not the words after. But Rakika, the B'tchila Lesl B'Sofisa, when the spitting takes place, normally it takes place after the chalitza. She removes the shoe and does the spitting. So if you do Rakika alone, if you do Rakika alone, all she did was spat, right? And then we say it's nothing, and she can still marry the brothers. People will think he did chalitza and spitting, and you can still marry the brothers. So that'll come out. That'll be a terrible misunderstanding. So Rakika the b'chila, because Rakika is on b'chila, she doesn't spit before the chalitza. Well, Sophie says only after she does the chalitza. If people see the spitting, somebody came into court and they say, hey, she spit, she must have done the chalitza, and yet you allow her to marry the brothers afterwards, right? Because it wasn't a proper chalitza. People will think there was a proper chalitza, and you can still marry the brothers. People will think that you're allowed to, that a woman who got chalitza is still allowed to marry the brothers subsequently, and we know that's not the case. So that's what Rabbi Kiva says, that if she did if she also did was read psukim, no harm will come of that. There's no chalitza here, and she could even marry the brothers afterwards. But if all she did was spit, and then you allow her to marry the brothers, people will think, oh, the spitting must have taken place after the chalitza. I mean, she got chalitza, she did the spitting, and still you allow her to marry the brothers. That's a problem. You can't do that. So therefore, because of that misunderstanding, Rabbi Kiva says, you know what? Even though I say Rakika is not required, but if she did spit, all she did was spit in front of the Bezdin, she can't marry the brothers anymore. She still needs a proper chalitza. You need a proper chalitza to free her to marry anybody in the street. Everybody says she has, the removal of the shoe is required according to everybody, even according to Bekiva, it's required. But if all you did was spit, you didn't fulfill the obligation to do the chalitza, but it ruins her enough from marrying the brothers. There's another version that we'll see tomorrow about what the purpose when they sent Abu to Shmuel, Yevamot Tachlots, what does that mean? We'll talk about that tomorrow. We'll continue. Have a good day. Shavua Tov.